The most thrilling, spine-tingling series ever.
From the pages of R.L. Stine's best-selling books,
And the screams go on forever and ever.
We now return to Goosebumps.
Greetings, Goosebumps fans, young and old, big and small, living dead and undead. Welcome back to the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Isaiah Vargas. I'm joined by my good buddy, Nick Shaw. We are the Goosebumps Crew, and we are back to talk some Goosebumps. If this is your first time joining us here on the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, I want to sincerely welcome you all as always. If you are or have ever been a fan of the Goosebumps series of books or the monster franchise those books spawned, I have a feeling this podcast is going to be right up your alley. As I always say, me, Bjorn, and Nick are some of the biggest Goosebumps nerds on the entire planet. We can talk about Goosebumps for hours, and that is exactly what we do here on this podcast. Every week, we got a brand new episode talking about everything Goosebumps, whether it be the books, TV shows, movies, video games, merchandise, whatever it is that has Goosebumps in the name. We're going to talk about it so much that the word Goosebumps is not going to sound like a real word anymore. That's how much we talk about it. So with all that said, if you end up liking today's episode, make sure you leave a like and comment. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit that bell notification to get updates when new episodes go up every Wednesday at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. If you're just dying to get those episodes, however, you can catch the audio-only versions a day early. We're available on platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow the Goosebumps Crew on social media, on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. You can also follow Bjorn and Nick at Goosebumps Aussie Fan and Shawan, respectively. All of those links are in the description below, so check them out. Join the Goosebumps Crew today. Become a crew member. We thank you in advance for your support. And I also want to introduce a very good friend of mine to the Goosebumps Crew. I want to introduce BeanieBearz, an uber talented artist and a great friend of mine. Beanie, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
We're very glad to have you. And today on the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, we are revisiting the world of Goosebumps comics and graphic novels. Of course, in the past, if any of you are familiar with us, we've done episodes talking about primarily the IDW Goosebumps comics, particularly Goosebumps Download and Die and Secrets of the Swamp with their respective authors. But today we are going into the world of Goosebumps Graphix. More specifically, the recent addition to the series, that being Goosebumps, the graphic novel, The Haunted Mask. And we're very, very pleased to have the author and illustrator behind this graphic novel, Maddi Gonzalez, joining us today. Maddi, thank you for joining us. How you doing?
Yeah, thank you. I'm doing great.
Awesome. We're very glad to have you, and we're very excited to talk about this graphic novel because it hit bookshelves in September of last year. It is the newest Goosebumps graphic novel since I think the last one was 9 years ago. And actually, let's get a little bit of history into Goosebumps Graphix. So once upon a time, there was a division of Scholastic called Graphix. It was basically their graphic novel division where they made, graphic novels, of course. They did mostly graphic novels based off their popular series, and of course Goosebumps was among them. They also did some original series like Bone, which was one that was definitely popular when I was growing up. In 2007, we got the very first Goosebumps graphic novel, Creepy Creatures. It basically featured 3 classic Goosebumps stories, each drawn by a different artist. So here, of course, we have Werewolf Fever Swamp, Scarecrow's Midnight, and Abominable Snowman Pasadena. It was a really good book. Definitely check it out if you haven't already. It was one of the first books that I ever read. Then in 2008, in the summer, we got 2 more editions. We got Terror Trips and Scary Summer. And then in 2015, in the lead up to the Goosebumps feature film, we got Slappy's Tales of Horror. It was a repackage of 3 stories from those first 3 books with of course, a new edition, that being Night of the Living Dummy. But 9 years since then, we finally have a brand new addition to that series, that being The Haunted Mask. And this time, it's not 3 stories, it's 1 story. So, my first question to you, Maddie,
The best story.
Yeah, definitely.
True.
So my first question to you, Maddie, since you are the author and illustrator who adapted this classic book into graphic novel form, but before we get into the graphic novel itself, I do want to ask, what got you into your current career as an illustrator and cartoonist?
Oh boy. So when I was a kid, as a lot of us do, we all, start kind of drawing, doodling, things like that. I never stopped. I was obsessed with it. I loved drawing comic books and comic strips and making fliporamas, from Captain Underpants, that type of stuff. And so when I was a teenager, I decided to go to an art school to pursue drawing comics for a living. I didn't make it my 4 years of art school, but I ended up leaving and kind of doing my own thing for a little while. And I think in 2015, I got my first published credit with Boom Studios. And after that, it's been kind of a steady roll of people contacting me to draw other people's scripts, and myself also making my own personal work and self-publishing that. So I think I got contacted for Goosebumps, I want to say in 2021, maybe. I'm a little rough on the details for a little while around that time, but since I got contacted for that, I have drawn Haunted Mask. I've drawn the upcoming Goosebumps graphic novel, and there is a third on the way.
Awesome. I'm very excited to see the third one. We don't even know what it is yet. And I'm just really, really excited.
Neither do I.
Yeah, I know. And we'll get more into that later. So what was your connection with, Goosebumps before you got involved with the graphic novels? Did you grow up with the books? Were you a fan?
Absolutely. So I, as a kid growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s, the Goosebumps books were pretty ubiquitous. They were all over the place. You go to the library, you go to the book fair. I would check mine out, I'm pretty sure, from my school library all the time. I read I only read the original 62 books from that era, I suppose, and then a few books from the Give Yourself Goosebumps era. Actually, I brought out from my personal collection the books that I know I've read. Let me count them. Hold on. Because I wanted to see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, I've only read 12 of the original 62 when I was a kid. These were the ones that I read. And I was crazy about them. Actually, when I was a kid, really interesting. Maybe it's... Well, I think it's interesting. I used to take parts of the Goosebumps books and I would draw them into comics for myself as a little kid. And so the fact that I get to do this for a living is a little mind-blowing, to say the least, because it's like a full circle moment for me.
Absolutely.
That is so nice.
And I still think they're great. I mean, for work, I've had to read, quite a few when we're deciding which ones, we want to adapt, and I'll read them for fun, and I want to say that I can credit them for me being so interested in horror at such a young age.
Oh yeah.
Horror books, horror comics, it all kind of stems from there, I want to say.
Definitely. Absolutely. So, of course, this first graphic novel that you did for the series was based off the 11th book in the original series, The Haunted Mask, usually referred to be one of, if not the best book in the original 62. What did you think of this book, initially on your reading of it?
So rereading it again, I totally remember reading it as a kid. And rereading it, I thought, it's still so solid. It holds up. The scares are great. I love the characters. I feel so strongly for little Carly Beth every time I think about her. My poor daughter. I really like it. I mean, I think that's pretty much an understatement. You know, that's the one that I think everybody, or at least, you know, most Goosebumps fans will agree that it's, you know, so solid. Front to back, start to end, like it's just, you know, a classic for a reason.
It's a
I
very introspective sort of story. It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
one of its kind amongst all the different Goosebumps books. Goosebumps is very campy at times. It's very sort of outward spookiness, but this was a story that worked so well because it was very inward. It was a
Yeah.
character essentially you know, through the lens of supernatural creatures and whatnot, in this case, masks, was fighting essentially her inner demons and, you know, her
Yeah.
want to be different when she learns to just be herself. It's a very good moral, and I feel like Stein found a way to really represent that in a way that is thematically appropriate. So that's why I personally feel it is the best book. Uh, I think of all of
Well,
Goosebumps.
Stein himself has even said that that's his favorite. So
Mhm. And it's just
Yeah,
a
it's
great book.
good.
It's a great episode too.
Oh yeah.
As well,
The
yeah.
original mini show. So it's just a great story overall, and I couldn't have imagined really a better book to start out with. It's crazy that it took this long to get one. You think that would
I
have been
know.
done like long ago, but
Right. Yeah.
I guess better
So
late
did
than
they
never.
ask you which one you wanted to do as your first one, or was this already a set thing?
So when Scholastic contacted me, they said we are going to be doing a Goosebumps graphic. I think the term is full length. I can't remember. They wanted to do the Goosebumps version of the like very, very highly successful Babysitters Club graphics novels. So they came to me and they said right off the bat, they were like, "We're doing Haunted Mask first."
Wow.
I want to say in the first email they maybe didn't tell me that it was going to be Haunted Mask until like maybe the second or third email, because I do very distinctly remember going back and reading Welcome to Dead House, right? And being like, "Whoa, this is crazy." There's kids got their eyeballs falling out and stuff. But yeah, it was very right away. They said we're going to start off with Haunted Mask. We're going to ask you to do some test pages. We're asking like several artists that are all going to be basically auditioning for who's going to be running the series. Not running, but you know, like starting off the series singularly. So
Mhm.
that,
Wow.
but in comparison to that, the second book, I got an option out of 4 books to choose, and it's not explicitly a secret, so I will just say that the second graphics Goosebumps book is going to be Monster Blood. So that's the scoop if nobody's heard it before, you heard it here first. And the books that they had me choose from that time around were, I'm gonna do my best to remember. I believe it was Werewolf of Fever Swamp, The Blob That Ate Everything,
Ooh.
Monster Blood, and Calling All Creeps. I really wanted to do Calling All Creeps. I think
Yeah.
the ranking that I had personally was I really want to do Calling All Creeps. I really want to do The Blob That Ate Everything because I thought it was really funny.
Yeah.
And Monster Blood I think was kind of on the lower end for ones that I wanted to adapt. And the reason that we went with Monster Blood, I think, was because since this series is starting out, and obviously our aim is to sell books, that was a more recognizable story. So we could start out with the real heavy hitter titles and then kind of go into the, I don't want to say lesser known, but lesser known ones in
Yeah.
the Goosebumps, I guess, bibliography.
Hierarchy, in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I
kind of a
understand where
hierarchy.
that's coming from. Yeah,
Mhm.
I was gonna say I understand where that's coming from. There's not they're trying to appeal to a casual fan as well,
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
so much just the diehards.
Mhm.
So you know where the Blob that ate everyone might not be someone may not even know that book because it was later in the series. I mean, but I feel like Werewolf Fever Swamp is very recognizable. But I feel like maybe because they did that one before,
Yeah, that might have been also it, I think.
Mhm.
Mhm.
maybe
what
they
I
put it on the
remember.
back burner. But out of all those, yeah, Calling All Creeps would be really cool.
I mean, I'm sitting over here
Oh,
being
yeah.
like, we almost
Oh
got
my
a
gosh.
Calling All Creeps graphic novel. Like,
It's too late.
Maybe in the future. Maybe in the future.
I'm just surprised
Well,
that they threw those two, you know, Calling All Creeps, Blob They Ate Everyone, because those are like later in the series, and those books don't normally get a lot
Yeah.
of attention.
Yeah.
But the fact that they were willing to do one of those two, like, so, early into this new series, like, that's actually kind of surprising.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
and I can't, I'm not gonna like say that this was definitely said because I have a kind of a iffy memory, but I want to say that somebody at one point mentioned maybe that it was about sales. So I wonder if
Oh.
Calling All Creeps had like a lot of sales, or at least over time drew a lot of sales.
Mhm.
So that could be a possibility. Legally, I don't know for sure though. So,
That was very interesting. I
um,
mean, who knows? But I mean, that's again, like there's so many Goosebumps books that I feel deserve their time in the sun.
yeah.
You got your Night of the Living Dummies, and you got your Haunted Mask and your Monster Bloods and all those ones, and those are definitely the most iconic. But like,
Yeah.
God, give me the Chicken graphic novel, for God's sake.
That's what I'm saying, man. Scholastic, if you're listening.
I saw it back there. Chicken.
This is funny, not to interrupt, I guess, the conversation we're having, but I found this at a used bookstore, and it's
Oh my
the
gosh.
only signed R.L. Stein book that I have.
Oh, no
Oh,
way.
It's Chicken.
You
That's my
have the
favorite.
Holy
My favorite.
Grail.
Oh yeah.
What a rare book.
Chicken.
Oh my God.
Yeah, you all wish you were me. I know.
Well, let me tell you, like if you haven't watched, like, I wouldn't say every episode, but most every episode, somehow we tie in chicken.
Thank
It's
God,
like
yes!
it's like the running gag at this point for this podcast.
That's because it's a great book, dude.
And,
Yeah.
because honestly, I think if that made it into like a real life horror film, like that's terrifying. Like that image would be just terrifying.
It
Imagine
really-
that
it really
coming
is.
out of the dark
Yeah, it's like,
or
what's
whatever
the-
happened.
No
And
one. No one
Isn't
wants
the
to be
tagline
chicken.
on the front cover? It's a finger licking nightmare.
It is.
Oh my God. Yes.
Oh,
I love that
jeez.
book.
Reader beware.
I love that book.
Reader beware.
Yeah, that's,
But back to the Haunted Mask. So
yeah, of course.
you had the goal of taking the original story and adapting it into a different sort of I don't want to say like I guess you're adapting it from a book with no pictures to a book that's all pictures. So you're having to change it into this different visual medium. What was the process of adapting the book like?
So there's a lot of things to consider with a very popular IP like this. I have to, as much as I would like to just go in and like kind of rip everything out and start anew and do my own like straight from my imagination kind of thing, I do feel like it is respectful and courteous to know what the general idea of this like IP is. So, like how do people, when the people think of Haunted Mask, like what do they think of? What's the, I guess for lack of a better phrase, like what's the fandom like? What are people going to expect from an adaptation of this that isn't going to alienate older readers, but also is still going to draw in and excite younger readers? And it's interesting that you say, yeah, like no pictures, because there is one big picture that is super important to
Very iconic.
Exactly. One that's extremely iconic picture that I have to draw from. That because some Haunted Mask adaptations, like, not to throw the TV show under the bus, but don't really have that. I guess like they're not really glued to that idea that is already presented in the Goosebumps like general universe or like cultural like thought. So for me, I had to consider a lot of those things. So when I was writing the script for the adaptation, I read the book for sure. I watched the TV show. I went on the fan Wikipedia. I'm like looking,
Wow.
like, making sure I'm covering all my bases and stuff like that. But after I kind of make a list of like, okay, well, what do I think is necessary to tell the story? From that aspect, I also dive into the story itself. What's necessary that makes the story work? What makes it Steiny? Like what's that kind of
Yeah.
those kinds of things that people really hold on to and remember as a story, as as a whole. There are some, like I said earlier, that Haunted Mask, I think, was just born absolutely just right out of the box, just like a great solid work. So I didn't really have to do a lot of surgery on it, I guess, which when you're adapting anything cross medium is something that you have to consider. You know, like a movie's never going to be just like the book. The book's never going to be like, you know, whatever, however you want to put that.
Yeah.
I think the changes that I remember making to On a Mask were usually just about pacing and flow. People have noticed that I switch the two big Carly Beth scaring incidents. There's that one at the very beginning where she eats a little sandwich with a worm in it, and then there's one later where her bullies make her think that she's getting bit by a spider. And when I was reading that, kind of trying to get into the mind of my audience, but also myself, but also fans, and also like kind of like really, really trying to hone in on what would make the story follow a really good arc that doesn't mess with it too much. I decided to switch those two scenes because to me, I felt like getting pinched and eating a worm is like sort of one of them feels a lot worse than the other.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was a really exciting change that I got to make pretty early on in the process. But
Wow.
otherwise, like other things that you have to do, you have to make sure that you know what all the set pieces are going to look like, all the locations. You got to keep a lot of things consistent in a graphic novel. So I have to, you know, keep track of Carly Beth's little outfits and like what does her room look like from every angle? What does her house look like from every angle? Like what does the Halloween shop and all, you know, there's a lot of things basically to have to keep in mind. But luckily, you know, since I work with a publisher, they have a lot of continuity editors and copy editors to make sure that all of those things are being kept in the perfect rhythm so that when you finally, as the reader, get that book off the shelf, you're not having a hard time accepting it as an adaptation.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot goes into the process of making a graphic novel.
Yes, my God.
Yeah, I guess one thing I can ask is what's your speed like? Like, does that take a long time, or are you on a time limit, or?
So last year when the Haunted Mask came out and was on the shelves, I also had another book come out called Tiffany's Griffin, which was written by my friend Magnolia Porter-Sedell. And it's totally a departure from, kid horror like Haunted Mask. It's fantasy.
Right.
And that book, from us getting picked up by the publisher to it getting the shelves, took 4 years. And it was a hugely long process. For Goosebumps, I finish one book a year, which is super speedy. And I have to figure out a lot of workflow efficient kind of things to make sure that I'm getting that out on time. Because
I imagine
they always want Scholastic wants a book a year, and they're also very specific about it being out in the fall season. So it's, you know, we're pretty constantly going at a very quick pace. So it is a lot of work and a lot of you got to be considerate of a lot of things, basically.
Yeah, that sounds stressful. Oh my goodness.
Kind of, I mean, yeah. Comics is working in comics can be pretty arduous.
Yeah. How do you handle that?
As an understatement. Well, I really like comics and I really like drawing, and that is, I think, if you want to get into comics and get into drawing for a living, you have to really like it, and you have to know that you're going to be putting a lot of your time into that every single day, and I am totally willing to do that, and so here I am.
I mean, yeah, the effort's very evident with your book. It's just, the art is beautiful, I gotta say. I love the line work.
Thank you. I love it.
I was just geeking out.
That process is probably my favorite part. I think my favorite parts of the process are figuring out what the layouts are. So basically, what is going to be seen on each panel in the page, what the panel is going to look like, shape wise, and like the location on the page, and how the pages are oriented. I think that is like a really, really fun puzzle solving part of the comics making process.
Really?
That I am obsessed with it. I think it's crazy. A really unique thing actually about adapting Goosebumps is, if you read the books, you'll know that the page turn or the chapter page turn is like a huge element of it that is always exciting, always frightening, always, in every single book is that like chapter page turn. And so I tried really hard to make sure that there were similar page turns in the comic version. So there's like, Carly Beth gets grabbed in one page and then, at the end of one page, and, in that split second before you turn the page, you're like, oh my God, what's happening? And then you turn the page and it's, it's just her bully or whatever.
So like right here, you can see like this is the scene where she gets pranked and thinking that she got bit by a spider, and then this is the end of the page. Like you think she got bit by something, and then you turn it over and you see that it was just the bully. So it's a great way to incorporate that sort of writing style.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because that's not something that I really get to do for other comics, because it's not really a super necessity. It can be really, really great for horror, but it's a really fun exercise knowing exactly when to like incorporate those page turns.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find my favorite one. I think my favorite one was all of the masks rushing out of the door to that big 2-page spread. I think is one of my favorite ones in the book.
It's beautiful.
Well, I gotta say, probably my favorite part, and I'm actually curious. It's been a while since I read the original book, but one scene I absolutely love is when she tries to get the mask to go away, and she finds the plaster head that her mom made, and then this is what happens. She's basically faced both of her faces, her regular face and the haunted mask, and it's like, and she herself has no face, so it's a very like internal battle visualized, and that's something that you can't really see in the original book because it's everything's in your imagination. And I love that addition. I like I said, it's been a while since I read the original book. Was that an addition or was that in the original story? Maybe you can help me out with that too, Nick.
So 100% I forgot I drew that until you opened it right now. Which is because I've been thinking about the other book. What happens is, in the book, to my memory, she puts on the plaster head, and there is a sequence where she is in her head and just thinking about her current situation. I think some of that, her seeing everything and her not having a face, that is invented by me purely. Because it's like you said, it's her internal monologue, and when you're reading, a prose book, that's all also in your head, and you're seeing that darkness with her. But yeah, adapting that to a graphic visual medium, you kind of have to invent ways to get that across, but in a different way. So that I was thinking a lot about. I can't really remember where I drew the inspiration from specifically, but these like ideas of you being in your actually there's a movie called Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson and Adam Pearson that they kind of go into. It's been years since I've seen that movie, but they go into like a void place where there's like water, and I think that might have been where I got that from. I can't remember at all. One key little, I guess, thing that I do like about that sequence is when she's pulling her own head off. I think is a very subtle little horror thing that I was shocked that I got to do. In the original drawings and the pencils rough stage, her like neck was actually coming off, but they were like, that's not too much.
Oh, that would have been amazing. No.
Just draw it in with a little Sharpie on your copy.
Yeah, you're right. I'll put a little Post-it note too.
Yeah,
look a
exactly.
little crude, but you'll get the message across, and that's what's important.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the director's cut version.
There you go.
I would have loved to see that. But yeah, that scene was just,
Hashtag release the Gonzalez cut.
but I'm so glad that you confirmed that for me, because it is a great visual thing, and the book is full of that, because again, you're going off. Here's the thing about the original books is you have that amazing cover art, but that is the only visual that you see. And you're essentially left to, and what I feel makes it so great for kids is that you're left to use your imagination to fill in the blanks. So you have the words, you think of like what the situation is. If there's like a big monster and they're describing like, you know, how like just ferocious it looks and how it has like 3 arms and 4 eyes and its like mouth is full of drool, like you're as a kid, you're thinking that. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to doing a visual medium like a graphic novel, you have to make those visuals. But it's also different because the visuals are also what's telling the story, and you just have little dialogue bubbles. So you kind of, it's almost like the complete mirror opposite of a regular Goosebumps book in terms of writing. So that's what's always interesting to me. But those little additions to fill out those descriptions, I feel are great, and that's one of my personal favorites. I just thought it was a great visual representation.
Thank you. Yeah, there's benefits, and I guess I don't want to say pros and cons, but there are different ways that you can present info in prose that sometimes I get really jealous of, because drawing is really hard. But also there's a lot of fun you get to do when you do get to draw. So I don't know. I do agree that it's really fun and interesting, and it's always really fun to figure that stuff out, you know, on the author end.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So we talked a little bit about this before we began recording, but I'm very curious to know. So you're of course under the umbrella Scholastic, and this is children's books we're talking about. So both in just sort of the adaptation phase and also just general, you know, censorship, how much freedom are you given when you're drawing these visual representations?
I want to say that my editor I work with, Anna Bloom, is pretty lenient with what I am allowed to depict, and she also makes sure that I am not missing anything like from the story, because she's pretty much the head of like all like Goosebumps at Graphix and Scholastic in general, from what I know. So I think there are some things that they will tell me to reel back. I will explain this. It might be a little redundant if you already know about the comics process, but everything is kind of turned in one step at a time. So I will turn in my script. If my editors look over it and they say everything's okay, they'll tell me. And if there's something that's a little iffy, they'll tell me. After the script, I will turn in my layouts, which are little tiny small drawings of how the pages are going to be oriented. After that, it's roughs or pencils, which is the sketch version of the comic. And then after that, once everything gets approved, it's onto the inks or the line art. And throughout that process, there's a lot of times where Scholastic or I will catch something and think, well, maybe that isn't, you know, clear enough for the story, or maybe that's a little too like yucky, like maybe we should pull back because of the age of the audience. But for the most part, from what I can recall, this one was pretty easy. All of the elements were approved. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I was actually a little surprised because for this version of the Haunted Mask, I was given the opportunity to design a bunch of the masks like for the first time, or add them. I'm pretty sure I added more that aren't described in the book, and I made them really scary, and they let me draw these like hideous, ugly things, and so that was pretty fun. And another thing that's great about working with someone who is kind of the queen of Goosebumps is that I will say, for example, like I want to put this Easter egg from another book or from the show or from something in this page, like, you know, and she'll pick up on it and be like, that's such a great idea, you know, that's great, do that. Aww. So yeah, I will say that There usually isn't much that needs to be censored or removed from a Goosebumps book, since they are, for kids. If I do any actual like storytelling uh modernizations, it'll be like a character uses a phone, or they text, or they do a Zoom call, stuff like that. But I try to keep the spirit and the storytelling as solid and as accurate, I guess, as possible.
Yeah, I gotta say, I don't know how they let you get away with putting that in the book.
I don't know
That was the
either.
scariest thing of all.
I know that was horrifying. It probably gave the kids nightmares with that.
Super last minute joke also. Every single, at least for the past two books, like every single time I've turned in the final pages, there's been like one joke where I'm like, there's a joke here, but I don't know what it is yet. And then usually right sliding at the finish line, I'm like, I got it. For a while, I think in the script for that, it said funny, relevant, silly character, and I think for a while it was just going to be like Five Nights at Freddy's or something, and it was it's like, I don't know what to put here. And then I I thought of that, and I think it's, well, I don't know how Mr. Stein thought of it, so we'll hopefully
honestly, knowing him, he probably cackled at that, so
I'm sure he loved it.
Well,
yeah.
I think Five Nights at Freddy's ended up somewhere else in the book. I can't remember, but
oh man,
they own the
I
license.
hope so.
They own the license, so I can't get in trouble.
For Goosebumps. Well, and I like I don't know if this is intentional or not, but I love the line afterward where the shopkeeper says, I think he's a TV star, and it's so funny because Carl Stein is notoriously bad at acting.
Yeah, and he's not in the TV show either, from what I know, so it's like,
well, he is. He does the introduction for like some of the like special episodes, but it's like super stilted.
Yeah,
it's always
and obviously he was cameoed in the movie.
Oh right, but in the new one, I don't think he's in the new one, which is what this is advertised.
There was like
Disney
one
Plus,
podcast that he's doing, but he's not really made much of an appearance. But in the original '90s show, he's just like, he talks in the same sort of tone of voice, but he's just a very stilted actor. I'll never forget Terror Tower when it ends with him just being like, "Can somebody let me out? Let me out of here! Let me out of here!"
Yeah, I think of it all the time. Well, that wasn't too scary, was it?
Yeah, I think they liked it.
It's really good. Yeah, I also
it's very dorky.
Somebody, I think a while back on somewhere on the internet, they were like, "Have you ever heard the musical?" And so I listened to that through. There was a musical version of Phantom of the Auditorium, I think, but it's just called Goosebumps the Musical, which I thought was funny. And he has a part in there too on the soundtrack.
Oh my goodness.
Kids, it's me, your principal. I don't know what he says.
He's Principal Stein.
Yeah. It's like, wow, this guy's everywhere.
Well, he even appears in like the reprisal at the end, which is so funny because it's like, so fall if you dare. So it's just like,
everyone's singing and he's just talking.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, if The Rock can do acting, I mean, and be the same in every movie, then Stein can too.
Yes,
you're so right. That's his thing.
Put R.L. Stein in Red One too. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Yes.
I met him very briefly for a promo that we did together for Haunted Mask Graphics, and we chatted very, very briefly before recording that segment, and I didn't know what to say. I was like, oh, I love Goosebumps, blah, blah. And he was like, I read your comic. I had a lot of reasons not to like it, but I liked it. And that was like, wow! It's like one of this funny, like, dry humor that I mean, maybe he was joking and maybe he wasn't. Maybe he did have a lot of reasons not to like it, but it's one thing that I kind of keep on repeat in my head all the time when I'm making these books. I'm like, well, got a lot of reasons not to like it, but maybe people will like it.
He's definitely got that sense of humor. It's very much
his
like
humor is that for sure.
Yeah,
it's so funny. And I know we've mentioned it on here before, but it still gives me a good chuckle. Just because when we had Catherine Long on here and she talked about meeting him, her description of him was a creepy Mr. Rogers.
Creepy Mr. Rogers.
Oh my God.
laugh still to this day because it's so true. Because when we met him in Wisconsin in October of 2023, you can't tell the difference. It's literally the same person who you watch in those introductions of the 90s show or on the specials or anything like that. Literally the same guy.
And his humor is the same too. He's like in all black.
All black, all the time. And you wonder like if he's got a different personality behind closed doors with like his wife or something. But like I don't know. Like, it's just so weird. It's like, does he just wake up? That's him, like, all the time.
Yeah. You think he puts on, like, a persona once he gets that little black shirt on? Like,
probably.
Yeah.
If it wasn't. I mean, I always just remember how he always told me a story about, I've gotten so many fan letters, but my favorite has to be, Dear Mr. Stein, I've read 40 of your books, and I think they're all boring.
Dear Mr. Stein, you are my second favorite author.
And refuses to elaborate.
He says that in every interview. When I was preparing for this, doing my research, I was listening to so many, and he either says that one that you just said, or he says the second favorite author one. And the greatest thing about it is that, like, there's 30, ish years of interviews with him, but he always says it like it just happened.
Yeah.
My goodness.
It's just like
the same exact way too. The inflection, everything always seems to be the same. Like,
you can just tell it was something that stuck with him, and he just loves talking about it because it's more probably for him to just make himself laugh. But yeah, obviously he makes everyone else laugh too.
He seems like a character for sure.
He's a jokester. I mean, that's what he started doing was being the funny guy. So it's not surprising that he's got sort of that odd sense of humor to him. But it's perfect. Like I always
it really suits him.
Exactly. I always say there's nobody that could have done Goosebumps like Stein did. Like, God forbid the day that he does pass away, it's like, I hope they don't continue the books because there's nobody, not one person on the whole planet that's going to replicate this sort of writing that he has.
Yeah, exactly.
Purely
his writing's very unique.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he was a pioneer. These Goosebumps, people forget, like, before Goosebumps, these sort of young, horror for young readers did not really exist. It was, Stephen King and like everything else, but like everything was more for young adults. When R.L. Stein came up with Goosebumps, that was like, that became popular, and then everyone else wanted to do the same thing. So he was a pioneer in that aspect. So
it really crossed the bridge between young adult novels and, children's novels.
Mm-hmm.
So that kids can have an outlet to actually read horror.
Yeah,
definitely. Well, and he did Fear Street, which is basically the next step up. So it's like,
yeah, pretty much.
He gets you with the Goosebumps, and then you go to Fear Street. So he's just got his iron grip on you for that period of life.
He has a very good range.
Early Goosebumps, as we've talked about in here before, and he even mentioned a little bit when we talked about Welcome to Dead House. I mean, in the beginning, he didn't really know what to do as far as so much, what should I introduce comedy? Should it all be straight horror? So Welcome to Dead House was very dark compared to later stuff. It wasn't until probably maybe after Be Careful What You Wish For, I'd say he started getting a little more comedic stuff put into his book that he kind of found a groove there between horror and comedy. But yeah, it's very interesting to find that to find that tone. And I know, like, since you're adapting a story that's so iconic, but you do have to probably cut some stuff out for what a graphic novel is, as we've discussed. So that kind of begs the question. I mean, like, I know through editing process, I mean, we talk about what can and can't be done because you're trying to reach a certain level of reader. But with a graphic novel, that kind of crosses a lot of different boundaries than just a standard, youth book. So what is it, guideline wise, that you look at yourself and say, I need to do this. Maybe this is too far. I know you said that, like, you have editors and stuff that go through and say, okay, well, we need to dial this back or what have you, like we talked about with the ripping the head off scenario. But I mean, do you think about, is that something major you have to think about with every single little line that you write or image you try to depict?
Yeah, I think with working for this audience, you do have a sense of responsibility sometimes, which is interesting because I both have to make this be a scary book, but also make it something that a child can come in and engage with in a way that isn't going
Yeah.
to be super overwhelming. Because, you know, if a kid's picking up Haunted Mask and they get scared and they get really freaked out, they can close it, you know? But
Hmm.
sometimes you maybe like what you can't really control, I guess, like what really, really sticks with a kid. So you want to kind of sort of toe a line between what a visual can be and uh what it should be. I guess I don't know if I'm kind of making sense here or even answering your question, so I'm sorry for that. But there's I basically try to stick with what is in the text, unless like I get free reign because there's, like I said, like cutting out a scene or adding a scene. That's something that I kind of have to weigh. Like if I'm adding a scene, how do I make sure that it is tonally consistent with the text of the book that I'm adapting? So if, for example, in Haunted Mask, I'm showing a bunch of like creepy faces, I'm like, okay, well, I can do a creepy face. So that's, you know, that's why like Carly Beth doesn't have a face because that's really creepy. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question so much. So uh, it's
It
sort
touches
of
on a little bit. I always kind of wonder, like, because we had Susan Lurie on here, and she edits a lot of Stein, or actually, she's edited all of Stein's books, as we found out, from Welcome to Dead House to everything current. Um, and I kind of had a similar question to her, but when you think about it, um, it is left to a child's imaginations with words, but pictures are visual and they can stick with someone longer, especially at a younger age. So that's why I was kind of wondering. I was like, there's a main difference between what you're reading and imagining yourself compared to what you actually visually are seeing.
yeah.
It's one thing to say read The Shining by Stephen King, but then go and watch The Shining uh, with Jack Nicholson and get a
Yeah.
totally different visual standpoint. So, you know, images are iconic in their own right. So that's why I was kind of wondering. I was like, do you toe a line with your images more so, even though you want to push the boundary a little bit more?
Yeah. No, I totally get what you're saying now. Absolutely. I will say that I think there are certain rules to this audience, um, where you want to make sure that the characters are going to be safe. Like, I'm not going to be actually, you know, chopping any kids' heads off or anything. Like, that's not like
Right.
something. What I like to, and here's a rule that I keep for myself also in my own horror, my personal work that I do, which is more mature horror comics. I try to make horror imagery be something that can't happen in real life in a lot of ways. And I guess this is maybe just my own sort of like compass that guides me when I'm making work. But for example, in Haunted Mask, like um, none of that is real. Like in Monster Blood, like slime isn't real, and it's slime is real. Slime is real, but
The slime is
it's
real.
not like that.
Living slime.
Slime is real.
Not like that. Like the threats, there are threats in these books that can harm the characters, but I want to make sure that if you're a kid reading it, that might be something that you think about a lot or that frightens you visually, but it's not going to be a threat that can really harm you in real life. I don't know if that's kind of, if I'm making any sense here, because if I can think back to something that I thought was super real and was going to get me, I when I was a kid, I watched a couple scenes from Child's Play and I watched a couple scenes from It, the limited TV show with Tim Curry, and I got those wires crossed in my head, and I thought Chucky was going to come out of my bathroom drain and get me. Like for years, I thought that, and so there is kind of a really um interesting sort of thought that I have all the time, because there is a chance that something that I draw can get tied up in a kid's brain and be something that really is, quite terrifying and quite frightening. But I hope that if a child comes to my books or my adaptations of these books, they will be able to read them all the way through and see that the characters are okay at the end, or they will be in a spot where they can close it and put it away and never have to see it again. Because I do think that kids really, really like creepy stuff, and they really, really like horror, and they like being able to engage with it on their own terms. As a child, people, you're surrounded by scary stuff all the time in real life. But if you're approaching it as a kid and you get to see these fantastical and sort of heightened, campy, ridiculous kind of versions of horror that can't hurt you in real life, to me, that's something that I find very important, because they're able to engage with it on their own level and do what they see fit with it. That's something I'm very passionate about, actually, a subject. I will see, I suppose, in a few years if somebody emails me and they'll say, "Hey, I read this book when I was 7 and I hate you."
Well, it's and that's very much how Stein thinks too, is because he's like, I want to write things that can that children are going to find interesting and maybe scary, but they're also going to know that it's not plausible in the real world. And I think what also helps is that he, once again, mirrors it through the lens of what kids deal with in real life, whether it be sort of maybe their parents don't listen to them when they feel they should, or they're having issues with bullies, or they're having issues with school, or they're not fitting in with friends, just to name a few. Kids go through those kinds of problems, and through the lens of horror, you can not only create something that's going to relate to them, but may actually help them through those problems, because you see a kid, fictional or otherwise, a kid who is going through those sorts of things, and it sort of is almost like a kid empowerment sort of thing, in my opinion. So it's a great way to write horror for kids, because it's something that a kid knows is not real, but they're interested, they'll read into it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best case scenario for me. Like I said, I'm not going to know really what the response is. And I don't think when you write anything for kids, you don't really, at least now, in this day and age, you don't really know what the response is until they get a little older. So
until they download Twitter.
Yeah. Until they get an email, and they're
Well,
you are my second least favorite artist of all time.
I always say I'm so glad I didn't have social media when I was 7. Let's just say it like that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. What I guess in the context of danger in a visual medium, I think all the time about I did a drawing event one time, and this teeny tiny little child came up to me and it was like, can you, again, it's always Five Nights at Freddy's. Can you draw me Five Nights at Freddy's? And I was like, whoa, they started telling me about stuff and about how they've got knives in their mouths and they're chewing people up and stuff. And I was like, you are so small.
Oh, wow.
Honestly, that is so real. That franchise is so geared advertising towards children, and yet when you actually get into the lore, it is messed up.
Awful.
It's insane.
Really scary looking. So what it's maybe not the healthiest or the most, I guess, ethical thing to do, but I always think, well, I'm not making Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way to look at it.
It is, yeah.
At least it's not Five Nights at Freddy's.
But then also, I say that now, but also I just remember that Graphix also has Five Nights at Freddy's comics. I don't know what's going on in there though. So
I don't know. Scholastic's been really. What's so funny is that technically they do have a Five Nights at Freddy's book series that is very, from what I've heard, very Goosebumps-esque. It's called Fazbear Frights.
Really?
Yeah, it's really weird. I haven't read any of them, so
Wow.
I don't have any opinion on them. But it's it's just so weird that franchise, considering again the lore. Somebody who's so familiar with it is wow, and kids just eat this up apparently.
Yeah,
I know. I'm surprised.
Kids
So
love
maybe,
creepy
you know
stuff.
what?
They love
Maybe
horror.
they
They
don't
love
care about the plausibility of things. Maybe they just want to see. They just want to see scary
yeah.
stuff.
Kids like
Maybe
to
they just want to be scared.
yeah, I think they do. I think kids do really like to be scared, and they like to be they like to learn about creepy things, and because I certainly remember being that way when I was a kid. Like even um there was a store in the mall when I was very young that had a Chucky doll hanging up or like sitting very tall up at the ceiling. And I remember being like, no, I don't want to walk by that store because Chucky's there. But I also was like,
But you'd still look
still
at
there?
it. Yeah.
Like I still wanted to look at him. I don't know. It's such a weird.
Humans have a weird curiosity for things that are dangerous. Like,
Yeah,
even if
I
you
noticed
know
that.
something is bad and dangerous and like very risky to you, even if you think that it could get you killed, there's like something in you that's just like, but maybe I should do
Yeah.
that. Like that's
And
why
I
You know, that's why there's the saying, curiosity killed the cat. That's why there's warning labels on things that say, do not eat this, even though it's a clear thing you
not
shouldn't eat or drink.
Please, for the love
Bleach.
of God.
Yeah, let's
right. And I would rather
probably have a thing on there. Don't eat.
yeah, I would rather a child read a Goosebumps book with a scary picture in it than drink bleach. Write
Yes.
that down.
Yeah.
Quote me on that.
Well,
You know, unless you do the adaptation, it came from beneath the sink and it was bleach. And then again, there's that cross referencing that we can do for this.
Yeah.
So
Uh-oh.
Oh man, no, I'm gonna quote that.
No, please.
I'd rather a kid read a Goosebumps book than drink bleach. No, I'm kidding. I'm
Yeah.
That reminds me. I know
Let's start a
he
movement.
hates it.
start a movement.
I know he gets so deeply upset about it, but there was that one time where R.L. Stine was tweeting a bunch of things and they were all separated. And one of the pieces says, what does it say? It says like it is always under any circumstances okay to bully a child or something like that. I can't remember. I would have
Oh
to
my
look it up
gosh.
again, but it reminds me of that like funny little like sound quotes and sound bites. Like I
Oh,
think
definitely. I love
always
that
gonna
kind of
be.
stuff.
Oh,
I
dear,
feel like
oh,
he
dear.
totally means that, though.
No,
Yeah, me too.
no,
he would be like, "Yeah, I said that."
no. We
I
did
can see him
not
owning up
condone
to
child
it.
bullying at Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Bullies always get their
Only-
comeuppance in Goosebumps, so
That is true.
I don't think each
Oh yeah,
bully
definitely
believes
little
it.
asshole kids get their comeuppance. Oh man. I do have to ask. So you mentioned earlier that you tried your best to implement a lot of Easter eggs in the book, relating to other Goosebumps books, the TV show, and just stuff like that. What would you say are some of like your favorite Easter eggs you implanted?
I don't know if I can call it my favorite because it's given me a lot of frustration, but I had this idea with graphics, like, what if in every book we hide a little drawing of Curly? And it's in
Aw.
the back. It says, "Find Curly. He looks like this." That was a kind of a last minute addition that I regrettably did not get to clarify. I think a lot of children and adults go into the book thinking that that this drawing of Curly is hidden in the book. That is false. It is a depiction of Curly that is hidden in the book. That is, I thought it was a great idea, but I drew it so extremely small that actually during the first few passes of the final version of the book, he was hidden by a speech bubble. And I had to be like,
Oh.
we can't do that because if he's hidden, nobody's gonna find him. And then they move the speech bubble, book comes out, nobody's found him.
Oh,
People always come to me and they're like, "Where's Curly? Are you lying to me? Are you playing a trick?"
I will be completely transparent. I did I always do a post asking our fans, to submit questions for our guest interviews. And I think I got at least 4 instances of people asking me, can you please ask where the Curly is hidden?
Yes, the truth will come out now.
Yay.
Oh dear God. And I thought I was so clever too. I was like, they're never gonna find that. And they never found it. So I deeply, deeply have to apologize to all of you. He is on page 111, panel 4, in the back of the room on the wall as a mask. next to the speech
Right.
bubble.
There.
He is
you're right.
small. I'm sorry.
Oh my
People of
gosh.
Goosebumps, forgive me. I made it easier in Monster Blood, I promise. Oh dear, oh dear.
Oh my god, I love that.
Yeah, that's oh dear. It's so funny. He's much easier to find in Monster Blood, I promise.
And I do have to give special shout out to this mask because that is one directly from the TV episode from the 90s show.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I really wanted to. I think in that first, I think there's a couple of shots of the mask room where the very top shelf is always the classic TV show masks. Because I think the craftsmanship on those are really cool. I think they're iconic. Okay,
Agreed.
I'm trying to find them myself right now. Yeah, there's. I feel like I really had to pay tribute to those masks, and I think you mentioned also that you know who the designer is, right?
Ron Stefanik, who worked on the original TV show.
Yeah, Ron. All the masks were designed by different people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was Ron's team, but Ron did the haunted mask itself. But all the other ones were modeled after the Seven Deadly Sins and done by people from his team.
Oh,
look at that.
Yep, so right up there.
Wow.
yeah, there they are. Yeah.
The unloved as they were in the TV show. I just love that. Like, I just love that sort
That's
of.
amazing.
I'm trying to think of any other Easter eggs. When she first goes into the this is not quite an Easter egg pertaining to Goosebumps, but there's a pair of little like Chucky dolls in the bottom of page 44 that are supposed to be me and my fiance, but I saw somebody ask if it was Slappy's wife. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
No.
You can believe that.
Well, and
But that's me.
Cute.
I also love this right here. Is that a Bart Simpson mask right there?
Oh yeah. We had to do an edit for that to make it look less like Bart. Actually,
Oh my gosh.
that's why you have like several runs of copy editing, because sometimes you'll draw like a little thing and it'll be like, well, we can't have it look like this character because they're gonna get after us, or
Jeez.
change the colors on this. Yeah, it's there are some things with I guess licensing and names of things that I don't quite understand, even after being, I guess I've only been in publishing for a little while, but for example, at this point in time, I name drop Nintendo in Monster Blood because I think there's a Nintendo name drop in the book. And that wasn't messed with, but yeah, like the Bart Simpson thing, we had to not better make it look like legally distinct, as Sabrina says. That was a little joke I made. Also in her dialogue.
Yeah, they're very strict with that, huh?
Yeah, because you want to kind of err on the safe side.
Yeah.
A lot of places can be pretty strict about that kind of thing. So they're trying to keep me safe, and they're trying to keep Scholastic safe as well, because legal stuff is no joke. But I'm still looking. I know that there's more because it's just been like such a minute since I've drawn this book, so I'm like looking at things in here. I'm like, whoa, when did I draw that?
It's like your own Easter egg now.
I know.
What another like personal Easter egg, I guess. Page. Oh, actually, yeah. This little scene with the grandma on the lawn, I think, is sort of a kind of adaptation of a scene from the book where they go into somebody's house and Carly Beth is showing her mask to like somebody's grandma, and she's really unimpressed. But putting them outside, I didn't.
Oh, I love that.
One, I didn't really want to draw another interior.
Yeah.
And two, this actually happened to my great grandma once. She was sitting outside on a lawn chair, during Halloween, and somebody asked if she was like an animatronic. So
Oh my gosh.
like a little part where Sabrina's like, is that like another lawn decoration? Because the guy in the book has a bunch of like animatronics all over the place. But no, it's just somebody's grandma.
Someone's grandma.
I love that.
Oh my gosh.
Ouch.
I do want to ask.
What a
really
fun thing
quick,
to add.
Yeah, me one day.
actually, that this whole scene in particular, I think, is a great example of just like the balance that you have in doing the art between the scary and then going back to sort of the funny, because the haunted mask itself, there's many moments where it's drawn as like very creepy, very disturbing, like monstrous, but then sometimes you need to just kind of show the sort of the sillier emotions.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that the mask was plausibly gross enough that you wouldn't want your face to be stuck like that forever, and that Carly Beth would be drawn to it in the in the store. But I also, there's a couple of times where I draw her in the mask and she's so cute. I just like, oh, you're my little bitty green baby. But that was really fun. Like knowing that I had that freedom also, I think, was great, because in the TV show, they have that beautiful, the original 90s TV show, they have that beautiful sculpted mask that does move with, with her eyes and with her mouth. But in practical effects, even and at the time, you have those kind of limitations. And in the comics, I was able to, squash and stretch that, that drawing and that design as far
I loved that.
as I was able to. One thing that I don't really talk about too much is in the middle part of the book, when Carly Beth decides to get revenge on Chuck and Steve, like the mask actually goes through a second transformation. It gets a little pointier and it gets a little grosser looking.
Yeah.
The ears, get a little scarier. Stuff like that. The teeth, I was really, really excited to draw all of the different forms.
Even like these drawings right here, you have like that sort of face, and then this one, and that's like covered up by the shadow, is really, really good. It's
I love the emotions. It's so good. And the squishing and squashing that you do with the mask, it's fantastic. Like, it's grotesque, but also just like, it's just wow. I loved it like a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
I love
Yeah, the shadow panel I really liked a lot, because I like the fact that like on Jacobus's work, the eyes are glowing, and it's something that I kind of wish they would have done even in the 90s show, because I think that concept is really creepy when you Stephen King's the It movie that came out in 2017 with Bill Skarsgård. They had that moment where he was in like that butcher warehouse scene or whatever, but it was dark on his face, but his eyes were glowing. And I always thought, oh my gosh, imagine the haunted mask that way though. You can kind of you can see the teeth and the drool, but you can't see the eyes or anything except they're glowing.
Oh, I love that panel.
So I think that would be actually terrifying to see if we could get that in the 90s show.
That would have been so cool.
That mask was
something like that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
So that was a really cool panel in this graphic novel. And I will say, like, some of the changes that you did make, I'm sure they just fit like your story's narrative better compared to the book, because obviously some things, like you said, had to be cut, and some things were switched around, obviously, compared to the book and this, as we discussed. So one of the things that I wrote down here, and I was just kind of curious about. So, in the book, the duck costume was at the mall and everything like that. So, like, is that something like you wanted to keep? Because like the duck costume is representative in the 90s show, I think, pretty well, but I don't remember it being exactly like how the book did it.
Yeah.
Well, it was found at a mall.
First saw the costume
in the show.
I'm pretty sure it was at the mall.
Yeah.
Her mom made it. Yeah. Rather than that. So, I mean, like, there's a few like little scene differences like that, which isn't really big deals to cut out, I guess. So.
Oh, yeah.
what was the decision process like? I guess using that as an example, like what did you decide like was important and not important to keep into your story?
I'm gonna go back to it real quick because I don't saw that ducky costumes. Okay, yeah. So in the graphic novel, I made you a ducky costume for Halloween. I sort of wanted to reinforce the character of Carly Beth's mom being crafty. So, like by her making the plaster head and her making the costume, it sort of like really reinforced the idea that like she's willing to be really creative and make things for for her daughter. Um, so that I think that was why I thought she made it in the book also. I went through so many like script script drafts that like I sometimes I get some elements confused, but yeah, I definitely wanted it to be a little more like a homemade thing, so that it would be yet another thing that her mom does for her out of love. Um, which is yeah, I try to make sure that if there's a part in the story that I can reinforce to aid the story, I will make that, kind of an edit, um, to just, I guess, just to strengthen the parts that I already keep.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I mean, like I imagine it was probably changed this way because I think in the book they saw it at the mall, and I think the '90s show redid that. But I mean, there's still malls today, but they're not quite as popular as they were back then due to online shopping and stuff. And this one
Yeah.
was seemed to be set more in modern day rather than say the '90s. When the book and the original episode came out. So I imagine those type of changes were made just due to the fact that you set yours in modern day. Because I
Yeah.
think you put in this new one, it wasn't the mall, it was like on TV or something like a singing competition or something.
Oh
Shoot.
yeah, oh yeah. They saw yes, yes. No, you're totally correct. You saw that ducky costume on a singing show and said it would be a funny idea.
Yeah,
I think I was like,
okay.
yeah, no, you're 100% on the money because I mean maybe kids still go to malls. I don't really I really don't think so, but they could.
Yeah.
They could.
But I was trying to think of like a more plausible thing that would read a little easier for somebody in the book's audience. So at the time I was drawing it, shows like The Masked Singer were really big.
Oh yeah.
So for me, I was like, okay, well, where would you see a duck costume on TV? Like,
Yeah.
what are they're not going to watch like QVC, you know? So I went with that, and little tiny tweaks like that are things that end up, I feel like, updating the story. There's like instead of a phone call, they have a video call, not only because, computers, but because in drawing form, it's a little easier to communicate. And you can have these two characters in one room, even though they're separate. But it's a little easier to draw them when like one character's like on a screen, but they're in different places, and it communicates that pretty easily. I don't think I give Carly Beth a cell phone. I can't remember. I think I thought very early on that there was a few parts where it could be like, oh, I called up Sabrina on my cell phone, and then I was like, well, it kind of gives it a little, because then like why wouldn't her mom just call her on the cell phone and be like, where are you? Like that
Right.
like cuts off the story at the end. So
Yeah.
when she's like, hey, I called Sabrina's house, where are you? Like, where have you been all night? If she has a cell phone, that weakens that story element. So there's certain things where I'm updating them for modern sensibilities because I think it is easier to draw, which is one thing. And there are certain things that I think I put in only because it will reinforce the storytelling that I'm trying to achieve.
I
That's
actually,
smart.
going back to the Easter eggs, I can't believe I forgot about this one. On the very first
What?
page, there's the
Attack the
jackal.
Jackal.
That's from Attack of the
Aw.
Dragons.
Oh
Yes.
my
So-
gosh, you're right.
I was like, I totally forgot about that one. But I actually wanted to go back quick to the sort of just the art style and just like how it can, go to being cartoony at times, because there's a bunch of like, I don't want to say, I guess there's a bunch of times where the art style becomes very, very chibi and cartoony, and it
Oh,
really
yeah.
adds to the comedy. And three of my favorites are actually not only at the beginning, but they're all from Sabrina. Like, I just love how you like.
Oh, I love Sabrina, my daughter. Yeah.
So, first one I want to point out is this one right here.
Yes. I love her face there. Oh my god.
Yeah, yeah.
She's so smug.
It's so smug and so funny. And
yeah,
then,
that was a fun one.
And then on the next page, there's this one right here.
Oh, yeah.
And then
so cute.
this
Oh,
one
she's
at the bottom.
pouting.
Yeah, she's like,
Oh my
pouting.
gosh.
Yeah,
She's so
I feel
cute.
like in the book, Sabrina's obviously like the kind of cool older sister character, or not necessarily older sister, but you know, she's a little more mature than Carly Beth. That's like reinforced a few times in the text. So I wanted her to be kind of a little more expressive and a little more confident, and so you know,
Yeah.
she's always goofing on Carly Beth, and she's making these cute little faces and doing all sorts of silly things. This little when she comes out of the panel in this page, and she's just like, "I told you so." Like, I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love
fun.
that.
It's so good.
She's just so smug.
Yeah, she has like a kind of a little.
This
A little,
one.
oh, I like that drawing. I like this drawing so much.
You know, it
This
almost
is
looks
what
like
I
the
mean,
sad
like-
SpongeBob meme, doesn't it?
I was about to say, yeah.
This is what I mean. Like coming back to this book, I'm like, hey, you know, because sometimes when you're drawing, when you're in the middle of a book, you're like, this looks like garbage. This is going to be the worst thing I've ever drawn in my life. And then like a year or two later, you're like, yeah, it's pretty good.
I love
Like, hey, I kind of, you know, it's the weird
That's how it
thing.
usually goes.
Yeah.
There's even like it's just a great way to like get the comedy across. I love this panel right here. This just a little box here at the
Oh,
bottom.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
After he steals the mask, and it's just the shopkeeper being like, "Can I get you a bag at least?"
Yeah, that's I think is straight from the book. He says that at the end of a chapter. And any point, this is a secret, a comic making secret. I will tell everybody right now. Any point where I really don't want to draw a whole page, I'll do a special page like that. So I think there's one like with just like a worm on it. And I was like, I really, really don't want to draw another page right now. This is going to be a page that
worm.
serves as there it is.
There you go.
This is going to be a page that serves as both a time break and a little break for the reader. But it also serves the very important purpose of I'm tired and I don't want to draw a whole page right now. I think there's probably like a proper term for what you call like a page with just a panel or a drawing like that. But it's a good little break.
No, the facial expressions are just like some of the best parts of the entire art style, because it goes
You're
between
fantastic.
the serious moments, the funny moments, the scary moments. Like it's such
Yeah.
a great like roller coaster of emotions, and it can really work like to the advantage of the storytelling.
Thank you.
Definitely.
I actually wanted to ask if you had any inspiration with anime or any type of cartoons, because it seems very or what type of anime were you inspired by?
Yeah, so I think I did at the very beginning of the development of this comic. I did a bunch of studies of stuff that I thought would visually, tonally work for Goosebumps. So I did a lot of studies of old like 90s, early 2000s Jamie Hewlett.
Yeah.
who's behind Tank Girls and Gorillas. I did
Yes.
studies for like Satoshi Kon is one of my influences.
Ooh.
So I did studies that because his works are usually very, very expressive and very volumetric in ways that I think are
Right.
grounded and real. But yeah, I mean, growing up, like I was super big on manga. Like when I went to the public library, I'd be checking out, Goosebumps on one hand and like a bunch of manga on the other.
That's how it should be.
That's a huge thing. I like have the ability to like really, really pump up like cartooniness and in like sort of a Western traditional manner and like manga influenced manner. And so I felt like I would have to have a pretty happy medium for an American audience, primarily.
Right.
But also someone who's coming from other graphic stories like the Babysitters Club, things like that. So it's a little restrained sometimes, I would say. But I try to make it as fun for me as possible, while still keeping that appropriateness for the audience. I will say that I have accidentally seen a few comments of people say, "Oh, this, anime nonsense," and my Goosebumps. I'm like, I'm sorry.
What?
I can't change who I am. Oh, it's fine. It's fine. I'm not. It's not going to be everybody's. It's totally not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and I don't seek out those comments. But sometimes, as a person who is a Goosebumps fan, and as a person who is researching Goosebumps like all the time, sometimes that shows up like in a Google search or on a
that's
Twitter
fair
comment or something, and I just have to.
Okay.
Yeah,
you
can't please everyone.
Have your free speech. Say whatever you want about my art. Just don't say it to me.
I just won't look.
I'm standing over there. Yeah, I'm not gonna look. Say whatever you want. I'm not gonna
have
look.
my fingers.
I'm covering my ears.
I just work here.
Okay, I totally forgot about these little comics at the end.
Oh,
I have to
love
give
those.
special mention to these. These are awesome, and I love
They're
this
so
final one
cute.
here.
Oh yes, that one is it's kind of cruel. So that one, yeah. Speaking of manga influence, growing up reading stuff like Full Metal Alchemist, for example, like that's the biggest one I can think of. They had those bonus comics in the back, and so I talked to my editors at Scholastic. I was like, can we have like little bonus content stuff in the back, like little jokey, like in-universe kind of comics, and they thought it was a great idea.
Pop her head off. Oh, that was easy. See you later.
Yeah, that was
so cute.
That was one of the first, like, sometimes when this is like your whole, like, taking up your whole day and your whole life, like sometimes you draw a little like fun thing. So that actually started as just a drawing in my sketchbook where Charlie Beth just pops her head off and there's a bone like sticking out.
And then he's just
great.
Like,
yeah, that like
his
goofy little face, right? And then like drawing my like depicting myself also interacting with the shopkeeper. I think is just a very silly, goofy thing to do.
Just like relax.
He's like, yeah. I wanted him to say "shut up" so bad, but I thought "shut up" was a little rude. I don't know if it is anymore. I feel like when I was younger, like words like "shut up" and words like "crap" were like upper tier children bad words.
It was like on the same level as like some of like really bad swear words.
Yeah.
Like,
I think in Monster Blood, a character gets to say that something sucks, and I'm like, how am I getting away with that?
They can say that?
I know.
What a new age.
You would say like "shut up," and as a kid, everyone else is just like,
yeah.
Oh, they just cursed.
You can't say
that.
I'm telling.
I do want to also bring up this little bonus. I love this bonus stuff, but this was focusing on the cover art.
Yes.
And we love talking about just sort of like the different kind of cover art designs that come about. What was it like, getting to design the cover for the book?
So it was a super, super nerve-wracking process. This is the first book in a new series. It's also like big intellectual property. You want to make a really good impression. You want to also make something that stands out enough on the shelf so that people are interested in it. A very new thing that I learned about on this book was that it's important as a bookseller to make sure that your cover can be noticed as a thumbnail on a digital marketplace. So it has to stick out both on the shelf in real size, be interesting, and also be seen well, and be attractive like when it's very, very small. So think of like Amazon or Target or something, like a website like that. Let me see these process ones. I had a bajillion ideas that I all thought
actually we had
would be pretty cool.
Someone share recently an uncorrected proof of this that had slight variation from what actually got released on the cover. Yeah. So the uncorrected proof actually had the mask's mouth like pretty open, right? If I'm not mistaken. And then I think this one, it was more closed. And then there was a few other minor details.
Oh wow!
compared to that.
Oh yeah. Whoa! I didn't realize that made it out there. Where'd you
Yeah,
get that?
that
We're not supposed to have that.
Oh, yeah, there you
Wow!
go.
Wait a minute. Did they buy that?
No, and
Those
then
are
this
not for
is
sale.
The uncorrected proof. So
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
wow.
Wow. I think I got a few copies of that. That's called like a galley copy or an advanced reader copy that's
yeah.
sent to
Just a
reviewers
shout
and
out to our buddy
retailers.
Oh,
Elvis
look at
and shout out to
that.
Goosebumps. He was able
Shout
to
out
get
Elvis. I think I follow you on Instagram.
yeah.
You're
Yeah, how
lucky
he
I
got
haven't
that,
logged
I have
in
no
a
idea.
month.
But
So, like it's even like not in color yet. Like,
Yeah.
Oh wow!
Yeah, that's who sold you that and give me their name.
And
need to know.
it had a
That's so
it had a
cool.
tease in the back of the
Yes.
encrypted proof for the next one.
Yeah. That was
Oh,
very, very late in the game we took that out. I can't remember why. I think in this one it's just like ads for the other Goosebumps, things like that. Yeah, I remember that version of the cover actually. I was given a picture of, they were like, can you make it look like one of the gremlins from Gremlins? I was like, yeah, okay. It was like a picture.
I can see the inspiration. Yeah.
It was like one of the gremlins, like its mouth wide open. One of my editors sent me.
Yeah.
Make it look like that. I'm like, okay, cool. The funny thing about this cover art page, I really, really, really liked this one up on the top where it's kind of her at an angle, and she's sort of lifting the mask to put it on. And they asked for a more straight on view. And at the time, I was really resistant to it. I thought, like we've narrowed it down to these designs, and I really like this like sideways one where the wall of masks is up there, and she's like kind of like apprehensive looking, sort of the reader. And as we were working on the process of finalizing the cover, this final cover really, really grew on me. And now, like whenever I see it, I am, so glad that we went with that one. So as the illustrator, I don't actually do the final colors for the book. The colors are done in Haunted Mask by Corey and Amanda Barba, and they they basically made the cover what it looks like now. So I pretty much only drew the line art, and they do all the colors. So when I finished the line art, I was still kind of on the fence. I was like, I don't know if I really think that's a striking or strong image. And then when Corey and Amanda sent back the colors, I was like, wait, this looks great. This is like the job and the work of a colorist, I feel like cannot be understated on comics like this, because they're working on, the same, if not quicker deadlines than I am, and they have to finalize all of this stuff, and they have to keep things consistent with the colors. And oh gee, I really do think it's like some of the most fun things ever is to send in that final line art and then be able to see the colors later and get just blown away all over again. And then the final cover with the logo and everything looks great. Our team keeps kind of getting shuffled around, so I'm trying to remember who did design. Okay, it was Larson McSwain who did the book design, so that was their idea to do the little mask on the spine. And the great hardcover, the back of the hardcover with that one drawing you were showing earlier, I think that's such a good idea.
Oh wow!
It's just so cool. I wish, one thing, if I had one critique that nobody back to Glass is going to get mad at me about, I think, is I wish that there was the little tail or the top like slime bit on the logo. I don't know why that's different, because for the TV show they still have that thing, that little thingy on the top. I don't know.
The new one, the little like
Disney
shorter,
Plus
but like you need the one that goes like all the way.
Yeah, the Disney Plus one was like pretty much non-existent.
Look at the original books.
I
the original book
large
logo
tail at the top.
and the '90s show used that logo with the more prominent piece on the top of the G.
And that's such an iconic thing that that's also part of Carly Beth's design in the first place. And when it's not mirrored, like in my head, it was going to be like, okay, you got the little ear shape and then you got the G right above it, but it's fine, it's okay. It's still I mean, all things considered.
I did like the inclusion of the little G's though that are in her ears. I thought that was pretty.
Thank you. When I came up with that idea, I was like, this is the greatest thing I'm ever gonna do in my life. I'm never gonna get any cleverer than this with anything I ever draw. So yeah, I can draw that ear like no problem now after drawing it 500 times.
Definitely. So actually, before the show, you had sent a few pieces of concept art from the dev process, and I want to just bring those up really quick.
Yes. So this sheet right here was part of my test page process, or part of, I guess, my audition or my pitch to be chosen as the artist for Goosebumps. So what I did was I drew out all of the characters at that time, how I had envisioned them, and I was a little like kind of teacher's pet about it. I drew like the headshots and all of them like screaming, like in horror. So let me see what changed here. I think the bangs on Carly Beth changed a little. I had her bangs mirror her mom's bangs. The shopkeeper is pretty silly looking. I don't know what the deal is there. Noah stayed the same, and obviously like the mask went through a few changes. I really like the way it looks though. Now that I'm seeing, I haven't seen this stuff in, like, I sent it to you earlier, but I haven't actually looked at it in quite a while.
And then
the ears, and then this next slide is part of my actual test page process. They gave what they did was they gave us, Scholastic gave us a excerpt from the book and then said, adapt this, like just do it how you would do it if you were hired. So I went all out. I did all the lettering myself. I did all the, the tones in black and white because they didn't ask for colors. So yeah, I think this is, I kind of got it in one shot, really, because I think this is the same layout that I use in the book.
Mm-hmm. Just about, I think so. I think
with some design changes. And so that's really fun. Yay! Yeah, this is
look at that.
I want to say like a third through the book, I was like, I cannot keep this thing consistent to save my life. So what I did was this top drawing, this top render, I should say, is I sculpted it myself on my iPad in a program called Nomad.
Oh wow.
And so I had my own personal little, sculpture of this design that I could rotate at my own leisure to reference. Because sometimes I'll use a lot of different things as reference for various things. Like a lot of the 3D knowledge that I have is fairly rudimentary, but in certain aspects, I can really make stuff that is very, very useful. So for that, I had the model of Carly Beth's head when this is, I think, the second form, the more evil, more like kind of crazy looking form. I did a lot of 3D mock-ups for settings in the book. I want to say the shop, it's in the back, I think, actually. The Halloween shop is a 3D model that I draw over. But I also had a sculpted version of the mask that I made out of Sculpey that I would use to kind of get the general idea that, I really, that's the first version.
Oh, wow.
That's the phase 1, I called it, of the mask. That's a little less scary. And then this one, that's a little scary. And I have also this little dolly that I would use for clothing reference for Carly Beth. She's a little scary and sad looking, but so every time I would need to know what do overalls look like from an angle, or what would her shoes look like, or what would her body or her hair be positioned like, or what would the light look like on falling on her or something. I would just use this and take pictures of it, or just hold it up and draw it. So I had
that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I definitely recommend. I don't know if it's super. It used to be when I was coming up as her shoe fell off.
Oh no!
When I was coming up as an artist, I feel like a lot of people thought that referencing was cheating. It was, you're not smart enough to draw it out of your off of your
mind.
Yeah, sorry, her head fell off. Oops.
Oh my god. Well, there she goes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Just like in the comic.
No,
he's having a problem.
Oh,
No,
that's
I
We've
myself
had
have been.
we've had Tim and Craig White, I think, said it too, and I want to say Mark Nagata said it too. I think all of them said it. They all had so for sure. Like some of them had like Tim modeled himself. Like he had a picture taken of himself. Like for instance, the Horror Camp Jelly Jam cover. That's Buddy. You know, the big smile. You know, and everything. That's him. Like we have the photo of him. It was hilarious. It looks funny. We share it with him and all that stuff. But I think it was Craig. I think he said he was actually given like a budget to hire an actor or something. Like I can't remember who it was. It might have been Mark. One of them had a budget to actually hire someone to use as physical reference for certain things.
Wow.
Whereas Tim, I think, was using like, for instance, it was his niece who modeled the Haunted Mask cover, and things like that. So I mean, they actually had references. I mean, there is nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
Of course, that's
Not
the
at all.
original. That's
Yeah,
the
that's the
original
cover. I cannot imagine what that
That's Tim Jacobus.
Oh god. Yeah, I think anything you can use, if you can use you know, your friends or yourself or a sculpture or you know, a toy, anything like that. I think there's a few scenes where I took pictures of myself like kind of pulling up my own face to get sort of like what, you know, pulling on a mask would look like. I also have, I think, a Freddy Krueger mask somewhere in my house that I used for a lot of reference. Nothing as funny as that, I don't think. Nothing as funny as that picture for sure.
I myself have been getting more into art, and references have been my best friend. So, like anybody who wants to tell you, like you know, references are you know, the work of not a true artist, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, just total goofball.
I was when I was growing up, like I wanted to be an artist. I still draw till today, and I almost went to art school. Like I was told I should, and I got an offer to go to Heron here in Indiana, but I was like, and I was like, at the time, like that's when digital art was really coming into play. But I was more of a like classic cartoon artist, and so the art form itself seemed to be dying at the time.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of work in that aspect, and kind of spoke to me at the time too. That's the case because that's why Mark Nagata ended up not doing the rest of the Give Yourself Goosebumps, and they hired Craig White, is because he did digital, whereas Mark didn't want to conform to digital.
I don't think he's ever done digital. If I remember,
I don't
know he has not done digital.
I don't know if he has or not. But yeah, I mean it's tough in the art world, at least during that time, especially when something new comes along. So like when AI comes along, you know, we've asked Tim about it and stuff, but I mean, like, have you thought about using that as a tool going forward, or is that something you're still like trying to hold off on?
AI?
Yeah.
So there's a distinction with AI stuff that can get kind of muddied, especially in the digital art space. There are certain algorithms, for example, that will make a noise pattern that you can use for a texture, certain algorithms that help you like sculpt digitally, things like that. But when it comes to like generative AI as we know it right now, I don't, to put it, I guess, politely, I don't care for it. And I don't see anything in my own workflow that would necessitate it or be improved by it. I've heard all about it. I've seen people talk about it. It's not something for me. And I kind of have a distaste for how it gets its ability to invent, I guess, that not even like, it's not inventing anything really. It's sort of like,
like generating.
Yeah. The way that it generates things, I think, to me personally, is unsavory.
It's uncanny.
I agree. Yeah.
I try to avoid it. I mean, like I said, like there's so many different forms of AI and like algorithms, you know.
Well, and God
like,
forbid people use like generate an entire AI image and then try to pass themselves on an artist. Like they'll just make something. And that's my art. That's not art.
It's not art at all.
It is not my favorite thing in the world, I guess, again, to put it politely.
I don't blame you. Yeah.
Because to me, part of drawing and part of making something is the process and is, you know, learning how to become better at something that you make with your own hands and with the tools that you have available to you.
Exactly.
And I guess maybe, some people will say like, well, the things that you're doing, like you just said, have all these algorithms and why is it different? And I guess that's really just the fundamental difference to me, is that I am not trying to like regurgitate, I guess, like visually stuff in another person's style. I'm trying to use my own tools to make my own style of work out of my own mind. And people say, well, artists, take from stuff and they reimagine from stuff all the same. And to that, I say, if your computer gets a virus, are you going to take it to a hospital for humans? I don't think so. Like, it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not.
That's a big difference.
It's not a one-to-one comparison, and it's a hard conversation. I think that. I don't know. Just for me, I'm cool with staying. If Photoshop, not that I use Photoshop, but if like Clip Studio Paint, or if my Nomad Sculpture, anything like never updated again, I would be fine at this level making the art that I do. And I, as a person who I get sick pretty often. I have a lot of times where I physically am unable to work. I am definitely grateful to tech for a lot of the ways that it makes me more efficient. And to go back to your point about artists kind of leaving behind traditional or analog art in order to, kind of like move forward with digital stuff, I do think that efficiency is kind of the main reason. Like all of these books, book publishers, they want things really, really quickly, and they want a lot of it, and they want it high quality. And that's sort of, I guess, not analog and traditional art is not conducive to quickness and to efficiency and to hyper like sell right now. I still work analog when I can. I love inking like analog traditionally with pens and nibs and markers and all sorts of stuff like that. But when it comes to selling books and making books, especially on timelines like mine, a book a year, it would not be beneficial, I guess, to the companies that I work for me to take time like that. And that's sort of an unfortunate reality of the industry. So and as a person who really likes art in every form, I feel bad that more people can't do things like draw analog, draw traditionally, make paintings, and make, these things that take longer time just because of how quickly the world moves and how quickly these publishers and even big studios like that are making cartoons and movies, how quickly and how much output they want all the time. It's a bummer. It's a bummer, but
it really is.
I still try to hold on to what I can do and what I can control. So that's that's about all my thoughts. I'm not a big fan of generative AI. I'll say that for sure.
Honestly, I think every artist isn't a fan of generative AI. That's like a big thing. It just gets rid of all the soul that comes with art.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'd see it all the time on like Twitter. Just people are like trying to pass off generative AI as art, and it's just like, number one, you didn't put any work into that. You typed in a prompt and you got a product. So that's there's no love, there's no passion into it. And even then, like AI is still developing, so to say.
Right.
Like it even if they try to make it look as realistic as possible, you're still gonna get someone with a weird looking face in the background, or
it's
an irregular
it's like scary.
It is scary.
Scary to me, but I think every single time I personally have seen a work or heard, read a post on the internet or something that I even like halfway thought was interesting, like the second I find out that it was not necessarily crafted by a person, I do get pretty turned off by it, no matter how
I
good
instantly
it looks
unlike it,
or how and it's not that I don't see the appeal. I mean, like typing in something and then something popping out for you like a like a vending machine, I think I can understand why that would be exciting, especially if it's customized to your specifications. But
it's cool.
To me,
it's a cool novelty.
That's not what art is about.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
cool novelty,
yeah.
but it's not something that should be used professionally, especially by people who have the ability to make great things on their own. So,
And that's the crazy part is I know some people they've told me that they've basically lost out on jobs. I mean, they use digital and things like that. Don't get me wrong. That's a tool that artists have been using again since the 90s, early 2000s, since its arrival. But and Tim Jacoba said it too. He's like, eventually somebody or everybody will have to probably conform to use AI as a tool in their art due to the fact that this is again the moving flow of the business. He's like, because not a lot of people wanted to go with digital either at the time, but it's one of those things you adapt and you go with it, and because this is what companies want.
They want that speedy stuff. They want it out. They want it.
They want it out. And again, like back in the day, Tim was saying like he would paint, he'd have to ship it. They would look at it. If they want changes, they ship it back. And he's like, it's a massive process to whereas like, with digital or anything now, they just send it right over. They have it, change this. They don't have to send anything back. There's nothing mailed. I mean, but it's still, now they still want it even faster.
Yeah.
So it makes it very difficult. And I know some of my artist friends feel like, they try to start this whole like movement to like ban AI from the art scene as far as getting jobs are concerned. Companies aren't having it though. That's the crazy part. They're just kind of like, well,
it's really true.
And that's the crappy part. But it's one of those things, and that's why I was wondering, if it's been kind of brought in your world yet. Like, hey, we can touch on this, but maybe AI would be a tool down the road that you would have to consider. But it's really hard to say where AI is going at this point, and whether or not it's going to actually be beneficial to mix with actual artists. Like, say, if you can do a rendering with digital, but then have AI do something with it, I don't know. It's going to be really tough to see where this goes. But it's always interesting to hear different artists' opinions about AI and how it's affecting their community, like professional artists. Like, it's very interesting to me because I don't have to worry about it in my line of work. But if I was like a professional artist, I'd be a little more concerned just because of what I've heard. But at the same time, it's kind of like, doesn't seem like it's going to affect anybody right away, but it's always in the back of their mind, I think.
It's not even only visual art that is getting affected by. I can't, to my memory right now, think of a friend of mine who's been replaced or partially replaced by generative AI, but a buddy of mine is a voiceover artist, and he lost out on a gig as an audiobook narrator because, and it's kind of a funny situation, but they thought his voice was AI, so they didn't pick him up.
What?
He has like this. They have like this really deep voice, and whoever was in contact with him was like, he's like, you can't trick us. Like, you're doing AI. People are. And they're just like, that's
imagine if somebody said that to James Earl Jones or something.
Like, seriously.
God, that is an insult.
Isn't that bizarre? And I do, like I said, I am a huge fan of art in all forms, from professional to hobbyist to outsider. Like, I think that if there's one thing that people are really good at doing, it's being obsessive little weirdos about stuff they enjoy. And so I always I keep the hope in my mind that there's always going to be people who are drawing and who are making and who are crafting with their hands and with their minds and their hearts and souls. So that's something that I just hold on to because, like you said, like it's advancing so quickly, and we don't know what it's going to look like in a week, in a year, in 10 years. I will say though, at this point, I have no interest in using it as part of my workflow.
Yep. So
that's fair.
To this last panel here.
Oh, my baby.
Aww.
My little bitty girls. I remember them saying that Sabrina looked too old, and I was like, what do you mean?
What?
So I had to kind of squish her up a little bit. I had to make her a little more chibi, but there's another few variations of the mask. I think it's a little chunkier.
Oh, the G. Yeah.
It's a little more angular. You can definitely see where I was doing some Jamie Hewlett studies.
Oh my god, yeah, now I do see that.
There you
Yeah,
go.
it's super,
Oh,
it's super evident in these ones now that I'm looking at them. I think no. So yeah, when it comes talking about analog and digital like in tandem, those sketches in the blue in the back are in my sketchbook, and then I brought them into my
really?
computer.
Wow.
Mhm. I brought them in my computer and I inked them digitally with Clip Studio Paint. So those black and
Wow.
white drawings are digital, and then um, the ones in the back are sketches in pencil.
Right.
So I sometimes when I really just need to get like ideas out really quickly or get a handle on how to draw something, like just figuring out how my hand is gonna, move and like how I'm gonna draw this as efficiently as possible, I'll start out on paper and I'll sketch out a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff. I wish I knew where it was, but I have a ton of just like iterating over and over and over again on like what is Carly Beth going to look like? How am I going to draw her from such and such angle? And a lot of that was in my sketchbook. As opposed
I
to
feel like
digital.
that's
Yeah,
a
sometimes
way
it's good to. Oh yeah, no, it's always good to step away from a screen and
Yeah, that's
feel
true too.
how you're gonna. Yeah, that too, because after a while you just get tunnel vision working on that tablet for a while.
Yeah, and I think also a thing that I feel, and I don't know if other people might feel this way too, about digital art is that you have every conceivable color, every tool, every possibility when you're working digitally, and it's
Yeah,
for me it's like overwhelming. I'm like, oh, I just need to get ideas out. So I pull
I
out
know. Yeah,
pencil and a sketchbook and just whack, 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 whack. Like,
I'm still finding things out
exactly.
nowadays. Like there's just things that I'm like, oh, there's that thing. Cool. I'm probably still
Yeah.
learning, but
there's so
I'm
much.
comfortable where I am.
Yeah, there's so much that you can learn and programs and brushes and
There's a lot.
There's so much. Yeah. Hmm.
Shortcuts and everything. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. Jeez.
Absolutely.
I know.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I think if I had my perfect world, I could spend like however many days like comic artists used to spend on a single page and work on a big drafting table with like all my tools and my whiteout.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's just not economically feasible, I'll say, for the most part. There's some people who do it, but I think when it comes to these kinds of schedules for like intellectual property license stuff, like it's very, very breakneck.
Mhm.
Yeah, you have to be quick with that now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, everything's quick.
Yeah,
There's no excuse now in terms of the way companies see that you got to be quick on things.
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
They're very harsh about it. Oh, actually, I did want to ask, what was your favorite panel working on the graphic novel?
Favorite panel? That's crazy. Let me oh geez. Worm sandwich.
I know there's a lot.
Let me think. It's hard to kind of get really, really granular about stuff like that. But if I guess I could
Right.
cheat. A lot of the spreads, I think, a spread like a two-pager, like
Oh,
when you open
yeah.
up, like spread the book. It's called a spread. I'm assuming that there's somebody in the audience who's never heard of a comic book before, so I'm being very like,
I have to say, I really
particular
like
about.
this one. Like, when the
Yeah,
when the
Oh,
box,
yeah.
you see that transformation and sort of like it just something about just the way the head looks. Like help me.
Well, I think a design choice that I made, another one that deviates from the book, is that in the book the whole head was plaster, but in this I I think I still said that the Mama Caldwell made the head out of plaster, but it's also got synthetic nylon as hair, and part of that was because I am I'm a big fan of like fashion dolls, like toys and things like that, as you can probably tell. And that's a big thing, is like, synthetic plastic hair. But also it's because it can make dynamic compositions like that. Like if you have the hair like whipping, in the wind,
Yeah.
that takes up space and that's dynamic and that, helps sell a lot of emotion. I think that hair is a big part of the way that I draw emoting.
Yeah, like
but
this
yeah, I
one
think
here where she's showing it off to Chuck and Steve, like just how the hair is
Yeah.
in the wind.
yeah. See, because it takes up all that space, and then you could draw a background, or you could draw a bunch of hair.
And how they
Exactly.
the eyes are like real glass eyes, and then you see like
Yeah.
how shallow they are.
Oh yeah,
Yes. And that's,
that is
all
so
of that is
good.
informed by my fascination for dolls and stuff. But yeah, this one's a big one, the run panel. That was
Yeah.
so fun to draw. And then back to spreads. This one, Symbol of Love. I think
Oh yeah.
this panel here where she's holding it above her head and all of the masks are like closing in on her, that is exactly how I pictured it when I read it as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow.
So like even like the day I got the email that it was like, hey, we want you to test her haunted mask, I was like, oh, I gotta think back on that,
I
that
even like
scene
this
when I was a
one, like,
kid and how
when she's looking at it's there's not even like really like a super big emotion, though. You can tell she's just like almost a little
She's just
like
pondering.
yeah, she's just pondering it, and then she's like got just a single I don't know if that's a tear or just a little sweat, but it's just like admiring her own face in the mirror.
Yeah.
whatever your interpretation is.
And then it's followed up by this
Whatever you
one.
think.
WAP.
Oh, yeah.
The wow.
I remember getting an edit like that I had to add Noah's hair because they were like, well, what if somebody doesn't know who that is? I'm like, really?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like, we need to make it very specific. I guess. Oh, geez, this is hard. I like a lot of the drawings in this. Okay. In a comic book nerd kind of way, I think I really like this panel, the shut up one.
Oh yeah.
It to me is a reference of the end of the Batman comic called The Killing Joke, where it is. There's a it's
One of my favorites.
It's Batman and the Joker, and there's a panel where like like comic book fans and historians are always arguing like, is he choking him, or are they, do they have their hands on their shoulders or something like that? And so I wanted to kind of play off of that that sequence in that panels because I really do like the Killing Joke. It's one of my favorite graphic novels.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
The classic Batman story too. So like,
oh yeah.
all the Batman stuff.
I wish the animated film was as good as the graphic novel, but
well,
that's an episode for another podcast.
Yeah.
So we've already talked about it already, but we can expect Monster Blood to be the next one, and that will be coming out later this year. Can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect from that one?
Yeah. So that's coming out in September, around the same time as Haunted Mask came out last year. There's a little bit more deviation from the source material, but not in a super big way. I think there's a lot of repetitive scenes in Monster Blood where Evan and Andy are kind of going back and forth from point A to point B. So there's a lot of storytelling in which like I'm sort of consolidating a bunch of scenes together. If Trigger sometimes looks like a cat, and if Sarah Beth kind of looks like a dog sometimes, I'm just going to apologize for that in advance because I had a very short amount of time to learn how to draw both animals convincingly. But I think that it's got a lot of really cool and fun sequences. I'm really excited for people to read that one. I love Evan and Andy. I think they are so ridiculous and so silly and so fun, and I don't know how much I can get into it, but that was a really fun challenge and I think a really fun book.
Absolutely, and I guess I'll plug on your behalf. If anyone in our audience wants to see some sneak previews of the upcoming graphic novel, they are on Maddi's Instagram, which, as always, I will leave in the description below. But you also said that you're signed on for a third book and hopefully more going forward. And I guess I got to ask probably the most biggest question of all. If you had the choice, Scholastic aside, if you had the choice to pick a book that you wanted to adapt, original 62 or otherwise, what would you have interest in doing?
Oh, geez. Okay, so to get this out of the way now, don't ask me what the third book is. I don't know yet. We haven't decided. This is hard. Okay, so my favorite book growing up is kind of a weird one, but it was The Headless Ghost, which I visited it very recently, and it's a lot of like kind of a larger framing story with the characters inside telling a lot more like smaller scary stories that creeped me the heck out when I was a kid and still kind of do. I really want to do Stay Out of the Basement. I really like Stay Out of the Basement. I'm looking at my pile that I brought earlier. Like, oh, what do I want to do? Mass Mutant would be funny because it's comics.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And
You
if
know,
I
it's funny.
had,
We
like,
did actually talk about that, how that one was never adapted, despite the fact that it
That's so
was
weird.
based on a comic
It
book
really
villain.
should be.
Yeah, I think it would be
Didn't make
really
a lot of
fun,
sense why it
especially the
wasn't.
ending.
Perfect.
Like the ending, I feel like the comics medium. I mean, maybe if we pick this, so if we do pick it, and I'll end up like spoiling myself right now, but I do think that like last final ending, that kind of meta of the character being in a comic, and like having the like that would be so creepy in an actual comic book.
Yeah.
Pie in the Sky crazy adaptation, I think, would probably be one of the Give Yourself Goosebumps books, which would be, I feel like, impossible to adapt into a comic medium. It would be 10 billion pages long, like every single, because, you know, like a page of Goosebumps can be a page of comics, or it can be 3 pages of comics, like depending on how, like what happens in the prose. So something like a Give Yourself Goosebumps, like Toy Terror, which was one of my favorites, or the Wicked Wax Museum, I want to say is the title. Those have such cool imagery and such scary ideas that I think would be so fun to draw, but also it would take forever, and it would be really hard to draw. Which is also another reason that I think I feel like I have to disappoint Slappy fans. I do think that it would. We're probably not going to do a Slappy book. I'm not, I'm not speaking permanently because that could be what happens next, but I don't think we do a Slappy book because the way that the books are set up, in order to even get to Slappy, you have to do a whole book first. So that would be at least 2 straight years of my life where all I'm doing is drawing.
Oh my gosh.
Oh god, yeah. No.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Well, you know what? Again, we got tons of Slappy representation. I think it's time to give some of the
he's
other.
fine.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I don't know.
They
Chicken
got
needs
one. They
love.
got one.
I'm saying Chicken is coming.
Chicken is coming.
Chicken
Honestly,
needs love.
one
That's
I
right.
would love.
Chicken.
One I would love to see. I don't know if you ever read it, but I Live in Your Basement, the 61st Goosebumps book. That would be a great one to adapt into a comic because that's also very. It's a very nightmarish sort of story.
I don't know if they could get away with that one.
Oh, really?
There's
imagery
there's
form.
a few. Yeah, there's a few that are unadaptable. I feel like
I feel like that's one of them.
I feel like
and this might be what I'm thinking of, but like there are some. Yeah, there are some Goosebumps books where the whole time it hinges on the fact that it's prose and that you're not seeing the characters.
Even as I said,
what
Werewolf
is
in
it?
Fever Swamp, that was adapted into this book. This one, it actually even has blood in it. Like there's
Not
like
blood.
a whole scene
wow.
where the werewolf chomps on Grady's shoulder and he's gripping it and it's bleeding and it's like, wow, I can't believe
Is it
they got away
shown
with
in
that.
the comic? Because those are black and white, right?
Yeah, it's black and white. So maybe that's one reason they got away with it. But
Yeah, you can get away
yeah,
with
but
blood if it's not red.
Like he chomps
Oh,
it,
not red.
yuck!
and then
Ooh.
trying to find a way to make it work in the camera.
Which is
Boy,
the
you
book
can
I'm
see-
thinking of where the whole time, I think it's My Best Friend is Invisible, right? Where the whole time it's like they're not people the whole time.
Yeah, no,
Sorry to spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert,
If
yeah.
any-
The
if
ending
any
of
8-year-olds
My Best
are reading
Friend- No, the ending of My Best Friend Invisible, they're all aliens, and
Yes,
the
and
invisible kid is the only human.
and it's never like touched upon from what I remember when I was a kid. It's never touched upon in the text. So like it's a huge like twist at the very end. That would be impossible to adapt. Yeah, that's
Camp Nightmare would be a good one.
Camp Nightmare, Egg Monsters from Mars, I feel would be neat. Or even
There's so many
Patience
cool
and Die.
images.
A lot of good ones.
Yeah, there's so many cool
Nine
images.
Terror Tower.
I say if this becomes a long running series, you'll be
Draw the
stuck with
Executioner would be really
Goosebumps for a
fun.
while.
Yeah, I do think at a certain point, they're probably going to bring on more artists like they did with the Babysitters Club books because I could dedicate the next 60 years of my life to this project, but I don't know if that's possible.
Oh.
But we'll see how that turns out. I'm excited to find out what the newer book is going to be.
Definitely. And I mean, I gotta reiterate once again, it took 9 years since the last Goosebumps graphic novel to get a new one. And now that we're on the prospect of one every year, I'm just so excited. I love the Goosebumps graphic novels and comics. It's just so cool how they can both do the adaptations and then the sense of IDW recontextualizations of the original books into a new story. So I'm so glad to just see these come back alongside the regular books by Stein. I'm very excited to see what's next. And I'm sure a lot of other people are. Definitely a lot of people are.
Oh yeah.
So absolutely, I'm very excited to see what Monster Blood has in store, and then whatever comes next from the series. So
Mysterious Book 3.
Yep.
Mysterious Book 3.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. Well, we are going to call it a night here on the Goosebumps Crew podcast. I want to give special thanks to our two special guests, of course, Maddi Gonzalez for joining us and talking some Goosebumps, and Beanie for joining us too and asking some questions of her own. Thank you both for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
It was really fun.
Happy to have both of you back on. You ever want to talk about Goosebumps again? Our virtual door is always open, as I say.
Yeah, see you next year.
Yes, please. See you next year. Yeah.
Hey, no, we will bring you back on when Monster Blood comes out. You can bring that right. You can say that right here.
Yeah, definitely.
But as always, I'm gonna make sure I leave links to Maddi and Beanie's social medias in the description below, so check them both out if you can. Definitely Maddi, because if you want to see previews of that Monster Blood graphic novel, you can find them over on our social media, so go check them out over there. But you can follow them both. Please do. They deserve the support 100%. And as always, make sure you follow, of course, Bjorn and Nick at Goosebumps, Saucy Fan, and Sean, respectively. If you like today's episode, make sure you like and comment. Follow us on our audio platforms and social medias. All those links are in the description below. We will have another episode out for you next week, but until then, this has been the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, and from all of us here, I want to wish you all, as always, to take care, stay safe, and have a very scary day.